Hello again and welcome back to Homebrewers Alley. Today we're going to be transferring the wit beer that we made about a month ago into the keg. Normally I wouldn't leave a beer in primary for a whole month, but you do get a yeast cake that will settle down at the bottom of your primary fermentation bucket, and if you leave it sit in there too long, sometimes it can affect the flavor. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. In the past I've had good experience with that, the one or two occasions that I have had it in there for a month. But because I'm not transferring the wit beer into a secondary fermentation and I'm going directly from primary to the keg, I felt that it was okay to leave it in primary the whole time. I took a gravity reading a little while ago, and our terminal gravity has turned out to be 1.010. Now remember, the starting gravity was 1.050. So we had a good drop in gravity, and that will end up being a wit beer that ends up being about 5.3%. which is right in range of what wit beers normally run. So today we'll show you how to do the transfer, and we're going to add priming sugar to this because it's going to be in the keg for another couple weeks before we start serving it. So now when you're transferring your beer into a keg instead of bottling, you don't always have to use priming sugar. If you're just going to put it in a kegerator and serve it that way, you normally will have a CO2 canister that you can regulate the carbonation with. However, in this case, I'm going to be serving this at a homebrew club campout, and so I want to get the carbonation process started. So I am going to be adding priming sugar to the keg today, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And also in a future episode, we're actually going to do a little bit of filming from the homebrew club campout and show you some options that you have if you want to take a keg out on a picnic or to a campout and that sort of thing, how you can transport it, keep it cold, and do the carbonation and whatnot. But that will be on a future episode. So now we're going to get this started and show you how to keg your beer. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to need when you're transferring into a keg, of course, is a keg. This is what we're using here. This is a reconditioned soda keg. Also, normally it's called a pony keg. And this holds 5 gallons of beer. Which translates to about 2 cases of 12-ounce bottles. So you'll have plenty to serve at your bar if you're using it in the kegerator, or if you're taking this out to a picnic. There should be plenty to go around. So now to do the transfer, it's the same exact process that we did when we transferred that IPA into a secondary fermentation into that carboy that we did on a previous episode. I got the wit beer up here in the primary fermentation bucket. It's because we're going to use gravity again, of course. And then I'm going to have the keg sitting here on the floor. I'm going to use the auto siphon and just siphon it down into the keg, and then we will add the priming sugar, seal it up, and we'll let it sit for the next couple of weeks to condition, start carbonating before it's actually served. Okay, so I've got my auto siphon in here. We're getting ready to do the transfer. I've got my keg, which has been sanitized. I sanitized the total inside of the keg as well as sanitizing my auto siphon. I use an iodophor and water mixture. You can use whatever works best for you, and your local homebrew shop can help you out if you're unsure of what type of sanitizer to use. I just have always used iodophor, and the thing is with iodophor is that it pretty much kills everything, so I like using it. So here we go. That's it. So the transfer is now going through. I don't know how well this comes through on the camera because we're kind of far away, but the beer is transferred. It's got a nice clear color, and just looking at it coming through the tube here, it's got really good clarity. And it's a nice light color, which is the correct thing for a wit beer, since wit beer also stands for white beer. So we do want a nice light colored beer. One other thing I wanted to mention while transferring this beer is that the tube that I have running out here, I have it going all the way to the bottom of the keg. That will prevent your beer from splashing and will prevent any over aeration, because you don't want, as usual, too much oxygen in your beer, because that can really affect the flavor. Give it a kind of it's compared to the taste of a dirty penny, kind of metallic, coppery taste. And so you don't want that in your beer, and you try to avoid that whenever possible. One last thing I wanted to mention during the transfer is that when you're doing a transfer with your auto siphon, you want to hold the auto siphon, the part that's in the bucket, about an inch or two off the bottom. that will prevent you from pulling up any of that yeast cake and transferring it into either your secondary fermentation or, in this case, the keg. You want to try to leave as much of that gunk in the primary that you can just discard later. Okay, so transfer is done. Got just about 5 gallons here. You're going to lose a little bit when you're doing the transfer because you're leaving some of that gunk in the bottom. But I actually started off with actually a little over 5 gallons. So I have a good amount here. Looking in the keg, it's almost full. And so we are good to go. So now we have our keg full of beer, and we are going to now be adding the sugar. I boiled a simple syrup of priming sugar and a cup of water, boiled it for about 10 minutes to make sure that it was sterilized, and then let it cool down to room temperature. And so now we are going to add that into our keg. Just going to pour the whole thing in there. And again, that's 4 ounces of priming sugar that I use for this wit beer. Now, one thing that I didn't show on camera is that I just sprayed off this lid with iodophor solution to make sure that it was good and sanitized. But you want to make sure that everything's sanitized with your beer as always. Okay. So, just going to put the lid in here. Make sure it's centered. Lock it down. Now we're good. And then there's going to be one more step to this that I'll show you next. Okay, so now one more step that we're going to take is to kind of mix up the sugar in there a little bit, and then also check to make sure that we have a proper seal on top of our keg in the lid section here. So basically just going to take the keg and do a slow tilt upside down and hold it there for a second and see if you get any drips, and then slowly put it back. And I have no drips, so that's a good thing. That means that I've got a good tight seal, and by doing that I've incorporated the sugar some more to help it condition faster and get the carbonation going. Okay, so I had no drips or leaks coming out, which means I have a good tight seal. By doing that slow flip over and back again, made sure that the sugar got better incorporated in there, and now I know I have no leaks, good tight seal. So now I can just set this aside and let it keg condition for the next 3 weeks, and then we'll be good to serve the beer. Okay, so that was our little episode on kegging. I hope that gave you a basic idea of how to keg your beer, and we appreciate you coming by and checking out Homebrewers Alley. Remember, you can always stop by on Facebook and become a fan. Check out our other videos on YouTube, or just pop us an email at homebrewersalley@gmail.com. But in the meantime, remember, relax, don't worry, and have a home brew, and happy brewing. Cheers.